Hey guys, tonight we trudge through a day in medieval times, a world where sunrise means sweat, strain, and barely a moment to catch your breath. The sun hasn't even peeked over the horizon, but you're already up, shoulders aching, hands cracked, bracing for the endless grind ahead. Imagine your feet sinking into mud as you haul sacks heavier than your hopes, or your back bending like a bow under the weight of harvest tools that feel more like medieval torture devices than helpers. Spoiler alert. You probably won't survive this long enough to see dusk without at least one mysterious ache that no medieval ointment can cure. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and hey, post your location and local time down below. I love seeing where my fellow history sleepers are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the relentless rhythm of medieval labor-dawn to dusk. Your body is both tool and burden. The day's work starts long before the birds sing, with the chill of early morning biting at your skin and fog hanging low over fields or cramped workshops. The medieval world has no snooze button, and it certainly doesn't come with ergonomic chairs or heating pads. Your first steps are into a world where the air is thick with the smell of earth, sweat, and wood smoke. Labor isn't just a job, it's your entire existence. Fields must be tilled, animals fed, tools repaired, and homes maintained all before the sun sets and darkness cloaks the land. No wonder ale was considered part of your daily wage, a frothy reward for enduring another day of back-breaking work. This is a world where leisure is a stranger, and rest is rationed like precious grain. Historians still argue whether the exhausting toil was mitigated enough by community bonds or if it simply wore down everyone to early graves. What's clear is that your muscles and bones are honed by constant use, not by choice. You don't sit, you stand, lift, pull, and push. There's no gym membership, but every day is a brutal full-body workout. Your hands, cracked from handling rough tools and raw materials, know every splinter and cut. Your feet, swollen from standing on uneven dirt and cobblestone, carry you onward regardless. The dawn of hardship is not a metaphor, it is your waking reality, and this is just the beginning. Your tools are primitive, but your work is anything but simple. Picture a wooden plow, heavy, unwieldy, often breaking mid-field, pulled by oxen that don't always cooperate. There's no power steering, no cushioned grips, just raw, gritty effort that sends shockwaves through your arms and back. Your muscles, though surprisingly strong from daily use, ache constantly. That dull throb in your lower back is your new normal, a reminder that medieval labor doesn't believe in easy. Sometimes, you use just a sharp flint or a rusted iron blade to harvest crops or repair fences. Sharp edges, splinters, and blunt impacts make every task a hazard. And the work doesn't stop at fields. If you're a blacksmith, imagine the relentless hammering on red-hot iron, sweat dripping into your eyes from the furnace's heat. Or if you're a weaver, your fingers are raw from pulling tight threads, your eyes strained by candlelight. The complexity of the craft doesn't translate to comfort. You're bending, stooping, stretching all day long. Your body is a battlefield, and medieval medicine isn't much help. You might wrap yourself in whatever linen you can afford, but it won't ease the strain. There's a quirky twist here. Medieval people believed that carrying heavy loads could actually toughen your spirit. Some folk thought your muscles held your very soul together, so suffering through the day was a kind of spiritual workout. On the other hand, if you overdid it, you'd be branded lazy or weak, a dangerous social label. Historians still argue whether this brutal physical labor was an unavoidable reality or if there were hidden coping mechanisms, like early forms of massage or herbal remedies, that we just don't have enough records about. Either way, the message is clear. Your muscles don't get a break, and your back is perpetually on the brink of rebellion. By midday, the aches have settled into your bones, but the work never lets up. Remember that medieval plow? It's like a stubborn beast, and if it breaks, you fix it with tools that could easily break you instead. Every movement is calculated, pain masked, as progress. After hours of back-breaking work, your reward isn't a paycheck or a pat on the back, it's ale. Yes, ale was more than just a casual drink. It was woven into the fabric of medieval labor life. A frothy pint, often thick and low in alcohol compared to modern beer, was considered part of your daily wage. It was a morale booster, a way to lubricate stiff joints and dull the edges of fatigue. The water wasn't always safe to drink, so ale, boiled during brewing, was often the safer choice. You might find yourself staggering home after a day's toil, your head light not just from exhaustion but from this liquid consolation. This relationship between ale and work was complex, though. Some argue it helped workers bond and relax after brutal days, but others think it just led to more hangovers and missed mornings. Imagine trying to pull that stubborn plow with a pounding headache. Not ideal. There was a thin line between the helpful buzz and a social liability. Interestingly, some medieval accounts mention small beer, a low-alcohol brew that people, including children, drank throughout the day. It was almost like the medieval equivalent of coffee for energy and hydration. This raises questions about how much medieval workers relied on these drinks to survive the day versus how much it actually impaired their performance. Historians still argue whether this daily ale ration improved productivity or was just a social crutch masking a harsher reality. What's undeniable is that ale wasn't a luxury but an essential part of medieval labor economics, a necessary lubricant in a world where the grind never stopped. So yes, your hard day's work might have been paid in part with a pint of murky, yeasty liquid that today's health nuts would probably side-eye. But hey, at least it wasn't crocodile dung sunscreen. Remember that? Still makes you grateful for modern sunscreen, doesn't it? You're not just surviving the physical grind, you're embedded in a tight social web that's crucial for making it through the day. Villages and towns are more than just places. They're complex networks of guilds, neighbors, and extended families all relying on each other. If you're a blacksmith, your guild isn't just a professional association, it's your support system, your social circle, and your economic lifeline. They enforce rules, set standards, and sometimes even protect you from unfair taxes or rulers. Guild membership could mean the difference between starving and steady income. Neighbors aren't just people you wave to. They're your emergency contacts, babysitters, and co-workers. When a harvest is coming in, it's all hands on deck. Everyone pitches in, even if it means working extra hours in someone else's fields. This communal labor often doubled as a social event, a chance to exchange news, gossip, and sometimes barter goods. You probably think village life was a cozy sitcom of neighborly love, but that's a bit romanticized. Rivalries, grudges, and petty disputes were common. You might find yourself navigating complex social tensions just as much as you navigate the muddy fields. But still, these bonds were vital. Isolation could mean death, especially during harsh winters or famines. A quirky fringe tidbit? Some medieval communities had charivari, a noisy, mock-serious ritual where villagers would gather to publicly shame someone who broke social norms. Imagine your neighbors banging pots and making racket outside your door because you married wrong or failed to show up for communal work. Talk about peer pressure. Historians still argue whether these social structures genuinely eased the burden of medieval life or if they simply added layers of complexity and stress. But one thing's clear. You wouldn't last a day without this fragile, noisy, and often unforgiving social glue holding you together. The seasons don't just pass quietly, they dominate your very existence. You don't get to pick your work hours, you work when the sun's up and the weather allows. Spring means planting, summer means tending, and autumn means frantic harvesting before the frost kills your crops. Winter, though, is less about work and more about survival, cold, hunger, and the ever-present threat of starvation. Your calendar isn't marked by parties or holidays, but by these relentless cycles. Weather is unpredictable. A sudden storm can wash away days of toil. Too much rain means flooded fields and rotting seeds. Too little rain, and your crops shrivel. There's no modern forecasting, no weather-adjust folklore, old wives' tales, and anxious watching of the sky. A drought could turn your village into a graveyard, while a good harvest might mean a rare moment of relief. You bundle yourself in layers of wool and linen, hoping it's enough to keep the chill at bay, but frostbite, illness, and cold nights under thatch roofs with little insulation are common. Those who survived the cruelest winters were often lucky or blessed with strong neighbors willing to share scarce food. A quirky medieval fact. Some farmers believed that specific planting days, tied to lunar phases or saints' feast days, could influence the weather and crop success. Whether it was superstition or early science, they trusted these rhythms deeply. Historians still argue how much climate shifts, like the Little Ice Age that began in the later Middle Ages, influenced the hardship of medieval peasants. Did colder, wetter conditions doom villages, or just add one more challenge to an already brutal life? Either way, the seasons didn't negotiate, they dictated everything, and your survival depended on reading their mood right. So remember, your day is not just hard, it's hostage to skies that might turn from friend to foe without warning. Food is another constant gamble. Your medieval diet is a patchwork of what the land, seasons, and luck provide, and frankly, it's not the kind of gourmet feast you'd brag about today. Breakfast might be a cold piece of hard bread or leftover pottage from yesterday. Lunch, if you're lucky, includes some vegetables or occasionally a bit of salted meat. Dinner is usually the largest meal, a stew or porridge cooked over an open fire, flavored with whatever herbs you can grow or barter. But hunger is never far behind. Crop failures, bad weather, or poor harvests mean scarcity, and sometimes starvation. You might find yourself chewing on bark, roots, or even acorns when food runs critically low. Famine years were devastating, reducing entire villages to skeletons barely able to work the fields. Here's a quirky tidbit. Medieval peasants often ate black bread made with rye or barley, which was dense, coarse, and sometimes infested with weevils, actual bugs. You had to swallow them alive or pick them out, which sounds less like dinner and more like a medieval dare. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were generally malnourished or adapted to their diets in ways we don't fully understand. Some evidence suggests they had decent nutrition when times were good, but those good times were painfully rare. You wouldn't just be tired from work, you'd be tired from lack of calories, vitamins, and protein. And don't forget, food preservation was rudimentary. No fridges or freezers. Leftovers could spoil quickly, making every meal a potential risk. Spoiled food meant sickness, and with medieval medicine being about as effective as a Band-Aid on a broken leg, that was a scary gamble. So while you might have thought ale was your only drink, your stomach was also constantly at war, making the medieval grind even tougher to bear. Disease is the invisible monster that follows you everywhere. In medieval towns and villages, cleanliness is a luxury few can afford. And germs? Well, no one even knows what germs are. Streets are muddy, waste often dumped near living quarters, and bathing? A rarity, except when it risked health or religious ritual. Fleas, lice, and rats thrive in this chaos, carrying deadly diseases like the plague, which can wipe out entire populations in weeks. Your immune system is constantly on high alert, but the medical knowledge around you is, let's say, medieval at best. Treatments range from herbal poultices to bloodletting, yes. Someone actually thought draining your blood would help. And if you got the plague, well, it was often a one-way ticket. Here's a curious fringe fact. Some communities believed that ringing church bells or lighting fires could drive away disease. Others thought that bad smells, called miasmas, were the cause. It's strange to imagine, but without microscopes, their theories were based on observation and superstition rather than science. Historians still argue whether the living conditions or lack of medical knowledge played a bigger role in the spread of diseases. Some suggest that crowded towns were the perfect breeding ground, while others emphasize poor hygiene and nutrition as critical factors. The constant threat of illness added a layer of dread to daily life, making every cough or fever a potential death sentence. So, as you haul that heavy load or tend your crops, remember you're sharing the same space with tiny, deadly enemies you can't see or fight. You step into the medieval town, and the senses are assaulted immediately. The air is thick with smoke from countless hearth fires and forges, mixing with the pungent smells of unwashed bodies, animal waste, and roasting meat. The streets are alive with the noisy clang of the blacksmith's hammer on anvil, the rhythmic clatter of weavers' looms, and the shouts of merchants hawking their wares. This cacophony never truly ceases. It's the soundtrack of survival, constant and exhausting. Blacksmiths pound away from dawn till dusk, their muscles bulging as they shape metal into tools, weapons, and horseshoes. Their work is essential but grueling, performed in near-constant heat that leaves their skin blistered and eyes stinging. Nearby, weavers focus intently on creating textiles, their fingers nimble but raw from repetitive strain. The noise can drive you mad, yet it also signals a functioning economy, the buzz of a town alive with trade and craft. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval blacksmiths believed that hammering iron while chanting or singing could imbue the metal with special powers. So if you ever think your workshop sounds like a karaoke bar gone wrong, you're not far off. Historians still argue whether medieval towns were hubs of economic opportunity or pressure cookers of pollution and stress. The unrelenting noise and smoke certainly made daily life harsh, but they also fostered community and commerce. So as you trudge through these noisy streets, remember that every clang and shout is part of the relentless machine that keeps medieval society moving. No earplugs allowed. Growing up in medieval times means skipping most of what we think of as childhood. From the moment you're old enough to hold a tool, you're expected to contribute. Children as young as 7 or 8 can be found tending animals, helping in fields, or assisting at home. Play, sure, but it's often brief and overshadowed by responsibility. Adolescence is a blur. You transition quickly from child to laborer, apprentice, or servant. Most kids never attend formal school unless they're from wealthy families. Instead, learning happens by watching, mimicking, and doing skills passed down by parents or guild masters. If you're lucky enough to become an apprentice, your days start early and end late, learning everything from shoemaking to blacksmithing. Mistakes might earn you a reprimand or worse, because every moment wasted costs your family or master dearly. Here's a fringe fact. Some medieval children were said to be farmers before teeth, starting work as soon as they could walk. It sounds brutal, but survival depended on every hand helping out, no matter how small. Historians still argue whether this early labor robbed children of a carefree youth or prepared them better for the harsh realities ahead. Some suggest medieval childhood was shorter but more practical, while others lament the loss of innocence. Your childhood in this era isn't about cartoons or recess. It's a rapid induction into the relentless world of work, where growing up fast isn't optional but necessary. The chains that bind you in medieval life aren't just physical, they're social, especially when it comes to gender. Your daily grind isn't equal. Roles are sharply divided, and expectations weigh heavily on your shoulders. If you're a woman, your work is endless, but often invisible. Spinning wool, tending children, cooking over smoky fires, and managing the household. Men might toil in fields or workshops, but women's labor is the backbone of the home economy, unglamorous and relentless. Marriage isn't just a personal choice, it's an economic arrangement, a survival strategy. Your value can be measured in your ability to produce children and manage the household efficiently. Women also worked in markets, sometimes running small shops or selling goods, but legal rights were limited. Men held most positions of power, both socially and politically, and their work often involved heavier manual labor or trades. A quirky tidbit. Some women disguised themselves as men to join guilds or even armies, slipping through cracks in social norms when necessity called. But discovery often meant harsh punishment. Historians still argue how flexible gender roles really were. Did medieval life allow more movement between roles than we think? Or was society rigidly fixed in its expectations? The truth likely varied by region, class, and circumstance. Whatever the case, your day-to-day life is tightly scripted by gendered expectations, with little room for deviation. So while your muscles ache, remember your role was shaped by rules older than the fields you till. Religious life colors every moment of your day, sometimes like a comforting blanket, other times like a heavy chain. You rise not only to toil but to prayers, bells tolling to mark hours for worship and rest. Your world is stitched together by rituals, saints' feast days, and fasts that influence what you eat and how you live. The church doesn't just preach morality, it governs the calendar, your labor, and even your mindset. You may find yourself attending Mass in a cold stone church with flickering candlelight, listening to chants in a language you don't fully understand. Faith offers hope in a brutal world, promising relief beyond this life. But it also enforces strict social rules, and behavior sin could bring misfortune, illness, or divine wrath. The line between superstition and religion is thin, and folk beliefs mix with doctrine in everyday practice. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval workers believed wearing charms blessed by priests could protect against accidents or illness, blending faith with a dash of old-world magic. Historians still argue how much religious belief shaped actual behavior versus how much was performed out of social pressure. Was faith a genuine solace or a tool for control? The answer likely depends on who you asked and whether you were a peasant, noble, or clergy. So as you drag yourself through endless work, remember your day is punctuated by prayers and rituals, a spiritual soundtrack to your earthly struggle. It's both your shield and your cage. Justice in medieval times isn't exactly what you'd call fair or speedy. The legal system is harsh, often arbitrary, and designed more to instill fear than deliver true justice. If you steal, you might lose a hand or worse. If you disrupt the peace or break guild rules, public humiliation or corporal punishment could be your fate. Jails are cramped, unsanitary pits where waiting could be as brutal as any sentence. Imagine standing in a village square, the entire community watching as you endure a pillory or whipping. These punishments serve as both penalty and warning, designed to keep everyone in line. Nobles might get off easier, but for common folk, the law is unforgiving. Trials often rely on oaths, ordeals, or the whim of local lords more than evidence or fairness. A quirky fact: some places used trial by combat, where disputes were settled by fighting it out, winner takes all, no lawyers required. Not exactly a system you'd want to bet on if you're more book-smart than brawler. Historians still argue whether medieval justice was fundamentally brutal or a necessary deterrent in a harsh society. Was it cruelty for cruelty's sake, or did it serve a social purpose we're just beginning to understand? Either way, you'd probably think twice before crossing any lines. So, as you face your exhausting day, remember the justice system is waiting, ready to punish those who falter or defy. It's another layer of pressure that makes survival less about thriving and more about not getting caught. Every so often, amid the ceaseless toil and hardship, there comes a rare flicker of light festivals and celebrations. These moments break the monotony, offering brief respite filled with music, dancing, and feasting. Villagers gather in the town square or fields to honor saints, mark harvests, or simply escape the grind. You might get to wear your best what little you have and enjoy treats that are usually off limits. But don't get too cozy. These festivals come with their own strict rules and rituals, and sometimes the revelry spirals into chaos. Drunken brawls, prank wars, and mischief are common, and the consequences can be as severe as the daily grind. Still, the laughter and communal joy provide a vital psychological boost, reminding everyone they're part of something larger. A quirky tidbit. In some festivals, people wore grotesque masks or costumes, believed to ward off evil spirits or just to stir up fun. Think of it as medieval cosplay meets supernatural security system. Historians still argue how much these festivities truly alleviated daily hardship or if they simply masked deeper social tensions. Were they genuine joy or necessary social pressure valves? Whatever the case, these moments are treasured and rare glimpses of light in a world of shadows. So, when you find yourself at a festival, savor the rare sweetness, because soon enough, the grind will pull you back into its unyielding grasp. Death, ever present and unkind, is woven tightly into your daily life. Unlike today's sterile hospitals and solemn funerals, medieval death is raw and immediate. Disease, injury, famine, and violence mean that neighbors, friends, and sometimes family vanish quickly, often without warning. You become familiar with the sight of hastily dug graves and the smell of decay in crowded cemeteries just outside town walls. Your burial, if you're lucky, is a simple affair. A wooden coffin, a handful of earth, and prayers muttered by the local priest. Wealthier folk get elaborate tombs, but most of the common people rest in mass graves or unmarked plots. Death isn't a distant event. It's an ever-lurking shadow that shapes how you live and work. Every cough or fever is a potential sentence, and children's mortality rates are heartbreakingly high. Here's a strange fact. Some communities practiced death cleansing, where belongings of the deceased were quickly redistributed, sometimes before the body even cooled, to prevent spiritual unrest or family disputes. Historians still argue how much medieval attitudes toward death shaped their willingness to endure hardship. Was a constant brush with mortality a motivation or a crushing weight? Either way, death is the final, harsh punctuation mark in a day filled with struggle. So as you labor, remember that every sunrise brings you closer to your inevitable end, a sobering reality that colors even the simplest tasks with quiet urgency. Your entire existence in medieval times is a relentless test of endurance, with barely a moment to breathe or dream. Every day is shaped by labor, weather, social pressures, and the looming presence of death. The world you inhabit is unforgiving, where comfort is rare and survival is the only goal. You wake, work, eat, pray, and sleep only to do it all again, often under harsher conditions than the day before. Historians still argue why the medieval world was so brutal and unforgiving. Was it simply the natural order before modern technology and medicine, or did rigid social structures and belief systems trap people in endless cycles of hardship? Maybe it's a bit of both. The truth is, you wouldn't last a day here without grit, resilience, and maybe a healthy dose of luck. This legacy of endurance echoes through time, reminding us how far humanity has come and how precarious life once was. Remember the ale wages, the plow's heavy pull, the noise of the forge, and the ever-watchful eyes of neighbors and church bells. All of it forged a world that demanded everything from you, with little in return. So as your eyes grow heavy and the medieval day fades into the quiet night, know that this harsh chapter of history, though distant, still whispers lessons about survival, community, and the human spirit. Now, to close softly, the day's relentless rhythm slows, and the harsh edges of medieval life soften in your mind's eye. You're no longer hauling sacks or tending fields, but gently drifting on a calm sea of quiet understanding. The world was harsh, yes, but it was lived with courage, with shared burdens, and with moments of unexpected grace. Let your breath deepen, your muscles relax, and the distant clang of hammers and laughter fade into a soft lullaby. Rest easy now, knowing that you've traveled through time and hardship and come through wiser and calmer. End of script. Sweet dreams.